Imagine falling, not for seconds, for minutes, falling through darkness so complete it has never known light. The pressure builds with every meter, crushing inward from all sides until it exceeds the weight of 50 jumbo jets, pressing down on your body. You descend past mountains taller than Everest, through waters that have remained undisturbed for millennia. This is not science fiction. This is the Mariana Trench, the deepest wound in Earth's skin. A chasm so profound that if you dropped Mount Everest into it, the summit would still sit over a mile beneath the surface. We've sent 12 people to the moon, but only 3 have reached the bottom of this abyss. Today, we're going there. The year is 1875. The HMS Challenger, a British naval vessel converted into a floating laboratory, cuts through the Pacific Ocean on a voyage that would redefine our understanding of the seas. The crew lowers a hemp rope weighted with lead, watching it sink and sink and sink. 5 miles down, maybe more. The rope isn't long enough to know for certain. They mark the location on their charts, noting the extraordinary depth, but they have no idea what lies below. They've just discovered the deepest place on Earth, but they won't understand what they've found for another 75 years. For decades, that sounding remained a curiosity, a number so extreme it seemed almost mythological. Sailors whispered about it. Scientists debated whether such depths could even exist. But without the technology to explore it, the trench remained little more than a mark on a map, a footnote in oceanographic records. It wasn't until 1951 that the trench was properly measured, using echo-sounding technology developed during World War II. Originally designed to detect enemy submarines, researchers sent pulses of sound into the depths and waited for them to bounce back. The numbers seemed impossible, nearly 7 miles straight down. They named the deepest section Challenger Deep, honoring that Victorian ship that first sensed the darkness below. But measuring depth from the surface is one thing. Going there is another entirely. For decades, the Mariana Trench remained as remote and mysterious as another planet, visible on our maps, but utterly unreachable. To understand the Mariana Trench, you have to understand the violence that created it. The Earth's crust is not solid. It's fractured into massive plates that drift across the molten rock beneath. These tectonic plates have been in motion for billions of years, colliding, separating, grinding against each other in a slow-motion dance that shapes continents and builds mountains. In the Western Pacific, one of these plates, the Pacific Plate, collides with the smaller Philippine Plate, but they don't just bump together. The heavier Oceanic Plate is forced downward, diving beneath the other in a process called subduction. It's swallowed by the mantle, melting back into the planet that formed it. The Uri Trench marks the scar of this collision, a massive arc stretching over 1,500 miles, longer than the distance from New York to Miami. At its deepest point, Challenger Deep, the ocean floor plunges 36,000 feet below sea level. That's deeper than commercial airliners fly above it. If you stood at the bottom and looked up, you'd be staring at nearly 7 miles of water above your head. The pressure at the bottom defies comprehension. 16,000 pounds per square inch, 8 tons pressing down on an area the size of your thumbnail. To put that in perspective, at sea level, the atmosphere exerts about 15 pounds per square inch on your body. At Challenger Deep, it's more than 1,000 times that. At this depth, the water itself becomes hostile, not just heavy, but almost solid in its density. Any air-filled space would be crushed instantly. A styrofoam cup dropped to the bottom returns the size of a thimble, compressed into something dense and hard. The temperature hovers just above freezing, between 34 and 39 degrees Fahrenheit. There is no light, no seasons, no day or night, no cycles of any kind that surface creatures would recognize. just eternal, crushing darkness and the slow rain of organic debris drifting down from the sunlit world miles above. And yet, impossibly, there is life. Only a handful of vessels have ever reached the bottom. Each descent is a gamble with death. In 1960, Jacques Picard and Don Walsh climbed into a steel sphere called the Trieste, essentially a bathysphere, hanging beneath a giant tank of gasoline for buoyancy. The sphere's walls were 5 inches of forged steel, designed to withstand pressures that would obliterate a nuclear submarine. The descent took nearly 5 hours. As they sank, the walls of their tiny capsule groaned and contracted from the pressure. Small rivulets of water began seeping through seals. They couldn't turn back. The only way to reduce pressure was to keep going down or drop ballast and shoot to the surface. They could only go down into the black unknown, trusting that the engineering would hold. The darkness outside was absolute. Their lights could penetrate only a few feet into water, so dense it seemed to swallow illumination. The temperature inside the sphere dropped. The air grew thin and stale. And still they descended, past depths where any leak would mean instant death, past the point of no return. When they finally touched bottom, the deepest point any human had ever reached, they looked out through their tiny porthole and saw something that should have been impossible: a flatfish calmly swimming along the seafloor. Life existed here in conditions that should annihilate it. That single observation changed everything we thought we knew about the limits of biology. It would be 52 years before anyone returned. In 2012, filmmaker James Cameron made a solo dive in a specially designed submersible called Deep Sea Challenger. His journey was faster, 2.5 hours, but no less harrowing. The sphere he sat in was only 43 inches wide, barely large enough to shift positions. He couldn't stand, couldn't stretch. Just sit in the fetal position as the submarine plunged through the darkness. Outside, the pressure was so intense it could compress the sub by 3 inches in every direction. Cameron described the bottom as a desolate lunar landscape, a pale, almost featureless plain of sediment stretching in every direction. But it wasn't dead. Far from it. What these explorers found was an alien world. Not barren, but teeming with bizarre, impossible creatures that have evolved to thrive in hell. The creatures of the Mariana Trench are evolution's strangest experiments. There are snailfish, ghostly translucent beings with loose, gelatinous skin that seems to ripple and flow. Their bones are so soft, they barely qualify as bones at all. More like flexible cartilage that bends under pressure rather than breaking. Their bodies contain organic compounds called piezolites that counteract the crushing force of the ocean, allowing their cells to function normally. They glide through the darkness like phantoms, utterly unbothered by the weight of the ocean above them. These fish have no swim bladders. Those would be crushed instantly. Instead, they've evolved a completely different way of controlling their buoyancy. One that works in an environment where traditional fish biology simply fails. Giant amoebas, single-celled organisms as large as softballs, crawl across the sediment like something from a fever dream. These xenophyophores shouldn't exist. Single cells aren't supposed to grow this large. The laws of surface area to volume ratio should make them impossible. But here, in the absence of predators and competition, they've had 400 million years to perfect their design. They're among the largest single-celled organisms on Earth, and we still don't fully understand how they work. Amphipods the size of dinner plates, crustaceans that on the surface might be a 1/4 inch long, scuttle through hydrothermal vents like alien insects. These vents create oases of warmth and nutrients, powered not by sunlight, but by the planet's internal heat. Superheated water, laden with minerals and chemicals, erupts from cracks in the Earth's crust. Around them, bacteria thrive on sulfur and methane, forming the base of an ecosystem that operates on completely different rules than the surface world. This is chemosynthesis, not photosynthesis. Life powered by chemistry instead of light. Some creatures here have no eyes. They abandoned them millions of years ago because light never reaches this far. What's the point of maintaining organs that serve no function? Others have evolved enormous eyes, hypersensitive to the faintest traces of bioluminescence. And many glow themselves, producing their own ghostly illumination in patterns we're only beginning to understand. They communicate, hunt, and mate, using languages of light in a place that has never known the sun. Blues and greens pulse through the darkness, warnings, lures, mating signals in a dialect written in photons. There are worms that burrow through the sediment, filtering nutrients from mud that's been accumulating for millions of years. Sea cucumbers that creep along like underwater caterpillars, eating the ocean floor itself and excreting it in neat coils. Jellyfish that drift through the water column, their tentacles trailing behind them like threads of gossamer. This is not survival. This is mastery. These organisms aren't clinging to existence. They own this realm. They've been perfecting their adaptations since before the dinosaurs walked the earth. They are specialists in the art of living where nothing should live. Every expedition to the trench reveals something new. In 2014, researchers discovered an entirely new species of snailfish at a depth of 26,000 feet, not even at the deepest point. In 2017, they found another species even deeper. Each time we descend, we encounter life forms that shouldn't exist, according to our models and theories. There are sounds recorded in the trench that we cannot explain, low-frequency rumbles and clicks that don't match any known biological or geological source. There are areas of the seafloor that glow faintly with bioluminescence, creating constellations of light in the abyss. We don't know what produces them or why. Recent geological surveys suggest there might be entire ecosystems hidden within the rocks themselves. Microbial life forms living miles beneath the seafloor, in the crust of the earth itself, feeding on minerals and chemicals in complete isolation from the surface world. If true, it would mean the Mariana Trench isn't just deep. It's the gateway to an even more vast and alien biosphere we're only beginning to suspect exists. Scientists estimate that we've explored less than 5% of the trench, less than 5%. The rest remains as unknown as it was in 1875 when the Challenger first dropped its weighted line into the darkness. We'd like to think of the Mariana Trench as pristine, untouched by human hands. We're wrong. During his 2012 dive, James Cameron collected samples from the seafloor. When scientists analyzed the tissues of amphipods and other organisms from Challenger Deep, they found something horrifying: plastic microfibers, industrial chemicals, and pollutants that had no business being there. PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls, banned for decades because of their toxicity, showed up in concentrations 50 times higher than in crabs from heavily polluted rivers in China. Think about that. The most remote place on Earth, a location humans have visited only a handful of times, already contains our pollution in concentrations higher than industrial rivers. The plastic fibers come from synthetic clothing, fishing nets, and packaging that breaks down into microscopic particles. These particles drift on ocean currents, slowly sinking, accumulating until they reach the bottom of the world. The creatures there ingest them, absorbing toxins into their tissues, passing them up the food chain. There's also the wreckage we've deliberately sent down: lost fishing gear, nets and lines that continue killing indiscriminately, scientific equipment that failed and was abandoned, even the remnants of crashed aircraft preserved in the cold, oxygen-poor depths, all settling into the sediment like archaeological layers of human civilization. The trench is becoming a time capsule of our waste, preserved forever in conditions that prevent normal decay. But perhaps most troubling is what we don't know. Recent expeditions have found evidence of new species on nearly every dive, creatures never before documented. We're polluting an ecosystem we haven't even finished discovering, altering an environment we don't yet understand. What species might we drive to extinction before we even know they exist? What chemical interactions are we triggering in an ecosystem that's been isolated and stable for millions of years? The Mariana Trench is not just a geographic curiosity, it's a mirror reflecting our relationship with the planet. We've walked on the moon. We've sent rovers to Mars. We've photographed galaxies billions of light years away. We've peered back in time to nearly the moment of the Big Bang. And yet, the deepest part of our own planet remains more mysterious, more unexplored than the surface of distant worlds. We have better maps of Mars than we do of the ocean floor. We know more about the topography of the moon than the bottom of the Mariana Trench. What else lives down there? What secrets are hidden in those crushing depths? Secrets about the origins of life, the resilience of biology, the limits of what's possible. Could the trench hold clues to how life began on Earth, or how it might exist on other worlds? Jupiter's moon. Europa has an ocean beneath its icy crust, dark and under immense pressure. If life can thrive in the Mariana Trench, perhaps it can thrive there too. We may never know all the secrets the trench holds. The technology required to explore it comprehensively, to map every square mile, to catalog every species, may not exist for decades. But one thing is certain: the abyss is not empty. It never was. The Mariana Trench is alive, teeming with nightmares and wonders in equal measure, with creatures that blur the line between possible and impossible. And it's watching us back through the darkness, from a place so hostile and so strange that it might as well be on another world. Except it's not. It's here, right below us, 7 miles down, beneath the waves we swim in and the ships we sail, waiting.